Hey!
Greetings friend, and welcome to the channel. In this video I'm going to be going over the basic information for the new Deep of Night mode while my first game of it plays in the background. This is the Relic setup that I went into the expedition with for Wilder. I got Wilder's Earring, the Everjoy Relic from the shop, and I got a really lucky roll with the post damage attack health. Taking attacks improves attack power, and the witching braces are actually kind of funny to use overall. The screenshot was taken after my first game, so I did not have any of those slots on there before. I just wasn't sure exactly what Night Fair I was going to use for my first game. Essentially how the new system works is after either your first game or win of the new mode, I'm not completely sure which, you'll get those 3 Deep of Night slots on every single urn or chalice that you currently have in your inventory, and those will only accept the Deep of Night relics, but they will only apply in the Deep of Night mode. So if you have the new relics on and then you go back to fight one of the normal base Night Lords or an Everdark Sovereign fight outside of the Deep of Night mode, the relic effects will not apply, positive or negative. Some of the main ways that this new mode is different from just normal base Nightreign is you are not allowed to select your Night Lord that you go after. You don't know that until you first load in and are selecting your character. You see it in the top left. Everything has a lot more health and hits a lot harder, and that will increase in difficulty the further depths you go down. As you win, you get points to increase your depth level. Losing will decrease the points, and the depths go from 1 to 5, with 1 to 3 being just the same ones but then progressively more difficult, and then 4 to 5 being an endless mode. You're also not allowed to select any shifting earth that you want for the expedition. And there are new mutated enemies, as you can see here. So these will be fairly easy to spot because of the red and black tendrils all over them. But they will be even tougher than just the normal, already tougher depth enemies. But they will drop weapons that will have 2 passives on them, and then 1 drawback passive that you have to take into consideration. These mutated enemies can be just normal trash mobs, but they can also be field bosses or the bosses at the top of like forts or in encampments and things like that. So the flame chariots will be one of the better ones if you have them mutated, just because you can jump up and attack the critical spot right away. Weapons that you get from the dormant powers from defeating bosses can also have the 2 passives and then 1 drawback to it, as you can see here. But then there are a red rarity weapon class that will drop as well, that will have even better effects on them. Things like lightning on precision aiming for arrows, or melee weapons mostly have charge attack enhancements like the summoning the spirit or holy ground or lava, things like that. Once this mode was announced, I made sure to go through and try to be fairly proficient with all the different Night Lords, just because you don't want to see the one that you're not completely comfortable with pop up and then just completely struggling in an even tougher environment. That just does not sound like the best time. The Night Invader events that will take over different POIs are also a lot more prevalent in this mode and will be the further depth you go down. So the attack power increase for defeating Night Invaders is honestly a pretty good bonus to try to tack on your build if you're able to. In general, it's going to be a little bit tougher to clear out as much as you normally would on a base or an Everdark run, just with how long everything will take to kill. That's one of the biggest things that I ran into, is just like even field bosses can take a lot longer than normal, and especially like the night 1 and 2 bosses. Because everything is so much tankier, you just might get a little bit more value out of the Night Invader bonus as opposed to the Evergel one, just because you more likely will not be able to clear as many as you normally would if you rely on that bonus to increase your damage. The biggest thing that'll help you in this mode is adaptability and overall Night Lord knowledge, so things like their strengths and weaknesses, and utilizing the presets for your builds when you're in the character select screen will also be good, especially for characters like Iron Eye that rely a lot more heavily on what element your starting bow has, just to take out some of that randomness. That takes care of all of the basic information for this new mode, and honestly, it's just so much fun. I have about 180 actual hours in the expeditions themselves, and just the randomness and ramping it up with all of the negative effects you can get on the weapons and the 2 really good passives makes it feel a lot more like a roguelike, and completely increased the fun factor for me. I'll let the rest of the expedition play out, and I will catch you at the Night Lord. This is a super solid run for the first Deep of Night for me, especially without any of the new relics to help me out. Both my teammates were very good overall, and just aside from the little bit of lack of communication for the top boss and castle, like everything went very smoothly overall. I'm beyond happy with the creating a vessel candle stand for this boss just to be able to spam fire attacks. All the drawbacks for the weapons that I got are fairly manageable too, and quite a few of the positive passives work well together and are good. Got the Sword of Milos to debuff, got some Starlight Shards to be able to spam the Asher War as much as possible, uplifting aromatics to buff the team, and help negate a little bit of the damage for the fight, because I know that they're going to be hitting hard even though it's just the base version, not the Everdark. I don't want to do any commentary for the actual fight, just because I feel like it'll take away from how intense it is. Just everything hits so much harder, and attacks you think would do a ton of damage do not do nearly as much as you would think. And the first time that I do go down, it obviously, you know, very, very on purpose and completely tactical. So that's all I'll say there. is my first win for this new mode in the books. I really cannot wait to sink my teeth into this mode a little bit more and just see everything it has to offer. Don't forget, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
PlayStation